I'm going to do a demo here, so let me just get my internet connectivity ready and we'll get started. As the system is being set up, one of the things I'd like to do is essentially take you through PureSystems from a value perspective, and more importantly, what I'd like to do is spend some time with you talking about, in general, what are some of the opportunities we can have in terms of bringing up value from a services perspective, but more importantly, adding an additional revenue stream within your organizations as well. So give me a couple of minutes and I'll get this. Signs of age, right? So if you haven't figured it out, when you wear glasses, you've got to figure something's going wrong with your eyes. All right, internet is connected, and I'm ready. Let's get started. Let's back up a little bit. Look at the audience here we have. Probably some of the smartest people we have in IT industry, I would say within, from a per capita perspective, or within just probably the entire world as well. So what we have to do is, I'm not going to teach you here how to build machines and things like that, or how to run your business. What I'd like to do is take this opportunity to at least share with you the thoughts and the design perspective we've got from an IBM perspective as to what we really are trying to do from a PureSystems family. And the reason we wanted to do this approach and take this approach is very simple. We know the systems that we're deploying today, the complexities are pretty hard as well. And when you ask yourself in terms of the time you're spending from an infrastructure perspective, you'll find that you're sending IT resources out there who are deploying things, or basically really getting started by loading the hardware, or basically setting up the hardware, unboxing them, loading the operating system, loading some patches and so on. And when you start thinking about it, these are IT professionals, right? I know you make services revenue out of it, but these are IT professionals, and you can probably get away by saying you don't need all the skilled resources to really go in and load the operating systems. So one area we want to do is to figure out a way to say, how do we as IBM, how do you as partners find a better way of taking your skilled IT resources and do some real high caliber professional services? And to do that, an area we want to focus in is really start looking at, what are the aspects of building a large systems, and it's really hard. Most of the time we spend is in configuration, test, implementation, procurement, and so on. So how do we make things easier for you? And that's the whole focus of our solution from a PureSystems family perspective. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as well. Then you start looking into the clients that have some challenges associated all the way from basic things like, some just wanted to run their databases, some want to run their business applications, some really want to be able to take advantage of big data, and half of them don't even understand what big data is, right? The minute you talk to them saying, what is big data? They'll look at you and say, isn't that just data warehouse? Probably not. I'll give you an example. You're familiar with Twitter. Yes? I had a bad airline experience, and I just tweeted, I'll never fly XXX airline again. I kid you not, within 10 minutes, I get an email from this particular airline, Mr. So-and-so, we apologize you had this bad experience. Can you share some details with us? And by the way, I didn't get a free ticket. Here's a free voucher to go visit our club next time. But at least you see somebody is monitoring all of these messages, and that is all part of big data. But one of the things you need to do is underneath that, there's a whole infrastructure and a set of services that get associated. So we are trying to figure out a way to say, let's get PureSystems and make sure that within PureSystems it accommodates various types of workloads, various types of client needs, various types of implementation services, so you don't have to go figure out a way to say, what happens to the hardware? Notice a change of language here. We're starting to talk about business solutions with customers instead of saying, my computer is faster than your computer. Big deal. It didn't solve your business problem at all. We absolutely get enamored, we get carried away, Most of the times we'll love talking about gigahertz, megahertz, you know, so many I/O ops per second per gigabyte, and what's yours? Big deal. That's a conversation starter, but it doesn't go solving business problems. So we want to take that away and saying, let's start talking solutions. I come from Rochester, Minnesota. Those of you who've heard me in the CSIs before, it's cold. It's nice now, but it gets to get cold. So what we tend to do is we have nothing better to do but to go to the lab and work. And our heritage is AS400 I-Series systems, and we've stole practically everything that we've learned from our mainframe brothers as well, in terms of how do you have an integrated system. So the disciplines of an integrated system is integration is hard. You know that. You try and integrate your application with the databases, with the web services. Integration is hard, particularly when the IT industry is so dynamic. And one of the things we want to do is figure out a way to say, let's take and mask away all the discussions we have about hardware speeds and feeds, take that out of the equation, and let's just start focusing on business problems. And this is where the PureSystems concept came about. We're going to focus on three things: built-in expertise, integration by design, of course the heritage, very similar to the AS400 in the mainframe. When you open the box up, it's there. You know, security is built in. You don't have to bolt it on. Simple things like that. When you run power on the machine, you expect the operating system and a sign-on screen to come up, not just a blue screen of death that you have to go figure out a way to reload everything. And the last one is simplified experience. And this is an area that is a little bit a lot of concerns coming through customers' perspective to say, what do you mean by centralized management? I have my storage administrator, I have my network administrator, I have my power and Unix administrator. You're going to tell me I'm going to get rid of those jobs? No. It's very simple. What we want to do from a simplified management experience perspective is give you a federated view of the day-to-day tasks that anybody needs to follow at a centralized location. So in other words, a day-to-day administrator doesn't have to be an expert of debugging storage I/O and so on. They just have to know, is my health okay? Do I need to call an ambulance? Is my status okay? Do I need to upload a PTF or fix pack? Is my configuration okay? What about my users and so on? So that really is the whole basis of saying, let's bring servers, storage, network, applications, middleware, all together from a simplified usage experience perspective. We'll spend some time on all of these areas. So having set this backdrop, I'll talk about PureSystems. By now, you should have heard about PureSystems from IBM, correct? If you haven't, I don't know where you've been hiding. I really don't know, because we really have gone after making sure the PureSystem message is heard. So what I want to do is focus on what exactly is PureSystems. Think of it as a family. Within the PureSystems family, we have three components or three offerings available. For those of you who would like to basically build your own customized solution, we have the Flex offering. And the Flex system essentially is a set of compute nodes, and you have a range within that, whether you buy a power compute node or an x86 compute node, and pretty soon you'll be able to buy a storage compute node as well. Today storage is left outside on the rack, but we'll basically be able to take the rails out from the rack and put it inside the chassis, the V7000. And that's coming up later on this quarter, or in the next quarter. And you have the network compute nodes. And the advantage of that is it gives you a choice in terms of how do you do deep customization at your location. So from a CSI perspective, particularly those of you who are business partners that are writing your own applications, this is very important for you as well. Think about an appliance delivery model where you essentially have a compute node that is preloaded with everything you need, including all the hardware, the operating system, the software, the application, the attributes associated with what you need to do, and you take that compute node, go to a customer that already has a chassis or a frame for PureSystems, and you install that compute node. Now you have an appliance that is ready to run. So you can do that, and we'll be happy to help you how to create those appliances for you. The second half is where you have integration. So I'm going to relate this in terms of, think in terms of, the best analogy I can come up with, I think in terms of a cake or a cake is okay, or maybe we can take a McDonald's analogy as well. You've got the buns, now you put the burger inside it, which is essentially a pure flex, right? You've got some layer of integration going through. The taste is better now. Then by the time you put your sauces on, your lettuce on, your tomatoes on, and everything, it becomes a pure application. Now the taste is even better. Relate that back to integration. It's very simple. With the two bread buns, you get nothing. You build your own. When you go into the pure flex system, you're adding integration to it, whereby we in manufacturing will put it all together for you. We'll preload the operating system, we'll preload the hardware, we'll pre-configure everything as well. Notice here, I'm starting to see some eyes saying, if IBM does all of that, what happens to my 2 days worth of services dollars that I actually charge the customer? I'm going to keep on stressing this. You guys need to move to better services opportunity. Sticking DVDs in hardware and having coffee, those days are gone. It's boring. I don't know how we get excited about sticking DVDs and waiting for 4 hours. Those days are gone. We need to be able to move your IT talent into better services offerings. Focus on application bring up. Focus on if you're an ERP or an insurance industry or a banking industry. Focus on those kind of services attributes associated with it. The third offering we have, so we talked about how we pre-built everything in manufacturing. We ship it to you. That is the pure flex offering. All right, what we don't do there is actually load the IBM middleware stack, which is database and WebSphere. And by the time we finish that, that becomes the pure application offering. So what you have is flex components, build your own, pure flex, which is essentially integrated offering, which has both x86 and power compute nodes. Along with that, we also have integrated management node. Along with that, we also have integrated cloud starting solution as well. We call the Smart Cloud Entry. And as you go up the stack, we have the full integration of not only the IBM operating systems, but also the IBM middleware. If you've actually done any middleware configurations yourself, you'll find that there are things you have to do. You know, simple things like do a DB2 connect. You have to set up your aliases. You have to set up your config files and all that. I'll talk about this as we go through pure application as we go through. It's exactly the value we bring on the table. So 3 offerings. Get yourself familiar with it. The first one, build your own. More importantly, build your own virtual appliances or build your own hardware appliance and ready for customers to be able to deploy and take advantage of that. Second one is factory integration. The third one is all the way through the middleware, IBM middleware integration. Here's what it's made up of. When you buy a flex offering or PureSystems offering, you get a chassis, very similar to Blade Center that you're familiar with. If you haven't seen it, basically it's, you get a frame, you put 14 blades in there, or 14 compute nodes we call them now, and from there on you're up and running. What you can do is be selective in there as well. You can have x86 power. That's our value proposition as well. We in IBM realize customers have a choice when it comes to picking their hardware architectures. What we want to do is figure out a way to say, sure, if you have a Unix choice, no problems. If you have an x86 choice, no problems. Let's bring it together for you. So we have that. We have built-in network. We have built-in storage. Within storage, we have built-in virtualization. And if you guys haven't started consulting your customers on storage virtualization, a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for you to start that discussion. Give you a different story altogether. About 5 years ago, I would have said, if I started talking about petabytes, how many of customers have 2 or 3 petabytes? Very few hands will go up, right? Terabytes were getting popular. Even now, terabytes is getting there. We're now starting to talk about zettabytes, and exabytes. In summary, what it means is you might end up with 150,000 disk drives in your computer location. All right. If you just look at mean time between failure, you will have to hire somebody replacing disk drives every 2 minutes. That is simply unacceptable. So one of the things we're doing is essentially walking into the concept, or is in fact, we lead in storage virtualization. So we're taking the concept of storage virtualization, combining that with tiering, not just solid state disk drive that you're all familiar with, flash drives and so on, but we're working in IBM something called storage class memory, which is essentially memory-based I/O. It sits pretty close to your main memory, then storage class memory, then solid drives, solid state drives, then the 15K RPM drives, then your 10K RPM drives, then your 7200 RPM drives. So now you've got tiering going through. If you don't start addressing virtualization needs of storage for your customers, you will find that they will run into problems in 3-4 years time frame where the data center disk capacity will outgrow what they can actually physically install. So you need to start thinking virtualization and tiering within storage. John Singh, a friend of mine, is going to talk about storage. I believe he has an elective, so be sure you can ask those, go to his session and give him some challenges. All right, enough on storage. So let me take you through integrated management experience. So we talked about the day-to-day administrative task. One area that we've really focused on is change the experience of an IT administrator completely. The second area, which is unknown to a lot of customers and partners in particular, is also change the experience, the way the IT or the services industry builds solutions on top of this as well. Not only are we saying we will give you an integrated management experience, but an important aspect of this is we've opened up the APIs. So using RESTful APIs, you can have your own applications write to those REST APIs and essentially have your own interfaces managing the entire IBM infrastructure underneath that. And that's exactly how Pure Application System is doing, and that's exactly how Tivoli is doing, and that's exactly how the first true integration with Pure System that we've had is SAP. With the SAP Landscape Manager, the NetWeaver Landscape Virtualization Manager, they do not touch a single IBM interface. So an end user in SAP completely bypasses our usage experience. They're still left in Landscape Manager, and they're able to manage the entire architecture underneath that, which is sitting on Pure Systems, right from their interfaces. So if you're a partner in the audience that is writing management applications, here's your opportunity to add value to your customer base to say, I have an open interface here, let's write to that as well. So we'll talk about some of that as in my detailed session for PureFlex tomorrow. So having set that stage, I'm going to take you a little bit deeper now into PureFlex, then we'll go into Pure Application, and then we'll wrap up. PureFlex, as I said, integrated system. Essentially, it has storage integrated with it. It has network integrated with it. At the same time, it has all the operating systems. Depending upon how you purchase them, you will have, there are editions available. There are foundation editions. There's Express, Standard, and Enterprise. Just like in IBM, we always tend to do that. Depending upon which one you buy, you will have a certain number of features added, pre-configured, preloaded, right out of manufacturing. So when the machine arrives at your location, all you have to do is get ready to start working on your application base and not necessarily worry about loading up the operating system and so on. Brilliant design concept. The way we've done things particularly is focused around taking full advantage of virtualization. So think in terms of if you haven't figured out how to create virtual appliances, this is something the industry has really picked up. This is something that is going to become a prereq into everything we do as we go to the cloud model as well. So start getting yourself educated on virtual appliances. Start getting yourself educated on how to create them, simple ones, and then start building on top of that the complexities that you want to build from an automation perspective. So instead of sending a consultant out, it's costing you as a company as well. Every time you sell a machine, somebody has to go set it up. Once the IBM, if it's IBM, they will set it up. They'll hand over the machine to the customers. Once that's done, the prereq that you guys have is before you load your application, you have to make sure the hardware is all set up, operating system is there. So you now have to sell your own consultant over there. How about if I just point you to a virtual appliance out on the website, you say load this, it will load the VM for you, or create the VM, load the operating system, load your application, and you're done. And also pre-configure your user preferences and so on. So that usage experience is going to be significantly enhanced as we go through that. And all of that is done through an integrated Flex System Manager. So we have the capability to deliver with Pure Flex System an integrated management point that not only manages virtualization across cross-hypervisors, but it also manages the administrative tasks associated with that as well. So things like doing updates, things like calling home, things like dynamic chassis mapping in terms of looking at things within the chassis to say what's failing, what needs to be repaired, predictive analysis, things like event-based automation. So in other words, I'll give an example. This is how simple it can be. Let's say your IT director or your company boss says, I need this query run tonight, and it better finish tonight. And you don't have resources in the IT, the compute power in the IT. If you had a Pure Flex environment, combined with the FSM or the Flex System Manager, you could literally point and click and relocate dynamically the VMs from one compute node to another compute node without any user intervention. Now free up that compute node and saying, Mr. Executive, we're going to run your query and dedicate that entire resource to them. And once that's done, you can relocate things back or let the system automatically take care for you. So that's the power of FSM that it gives you on top of the Pure Flex system. So what's the value here? I talked about SAP. These figures are real. This was done on a real customer as well. It wasn't just done on basically IBM test data using SAP as an application. Our Bublinger lab worked with the Pure Flex system. Combining that with virtualization, we're able to turn around and reduce and shrink significant amount of deploy time. And this is the point I'm trying to make here, is what you're going to find is infrastructure setup kinds of services are going to be automated. If we don't automate it, somebody else will. So we need to figure out a way to endorse, start using virtual appliances, but more importantly, shift your services focus from doing infrastructure setup to doing business consulting and application consulting in that aspect. All right. From a performance perspective, I have this chart, but you should know by now, no matter what happens, IBM has the best hardware, right? Come on, guys. Yes. It doesn't matter, so let's move on. Okay. How do you sell this? Depending upon the customer usage patterns, depending upon the maturity of their organizations, depending upon what you want to do yourself, you have flexible additions as well. So you can start with Express, as the name suggests, get you started. If you go, then you can go to standard edition. And as we keep on adding these things, it's not a matter of just saying, I throw you more compute nodes. What we also do behind the scene that you probably don't realize and you probably don't pay attention is when we say you go from Express to standard, we'll sit back and saying, okay, it means you're going to get more software. It also means you're going to get more compute power, in other words, x86 or power compute nodes. But behind the scene, we'll turn around and say, these guys are getting serious. You absolutely do not have to reconfigure anything other than fine-tuning and customizing it. Simple things like, I'll give you an example, partition tables on DB2. Normally you would go in and configure them yourself. All right? Because we know the memory configuration, because we know the disk configuration, we'll do the partition tables for you. Query optimizer, rules-based, cost-based, don't worry about all of that. We'll take care of it. We'll give you the best optimized path to run your SQL queries associated with this. So things, very simple things like that are pre-configured as part of your bring up. The beauty of all this is once you set up an instance, we capture that instance. Literally, we snapshot that instance, save that instance, it's a virtual appliance now, in a repository. So you can have repeatable deploys. Every time you deploy, it's consistent. How many times have you loaded software and you take the same DVD and go to your desk and load the same software, but the results are different? All right? Something's wrong because your device drivers are different, your hardware stack is different, your processor is different, and so on. One of the advantages of virtual appliance as you capture these things is you have a snapshot of a clone that you can have it repeated consistently across multiple times. And if you want to tweak it, change it, no problems. We have a tool available for you that you can use as well, and I'll show you a brief demo of where the tool is available. So, we talked about Pure Flex, we talked about Pure Application. This is where the CSI team comes in now. What we need you to do is get started into making those burgers. All right? What VMware does today, by the way, and this will give you how far we've gone up the stack. VMware basically today, when you look at your templates on VMware, creates virtual appliances. They call them templates. What they do is essentially create a VM and load the operating system. That's where they stop. We have taken the approach of saying, who cares about loading the operating system? You have to configure the security. You have to configure the root password or change it or force the customer to change it. You shouldn't have to just say leave root passwords open. Things like that. We will basically create a virtual appliance, and this is where we turn around and say, all right, for Pure Flex, a virtual appliance will comprise of VM attributes, your operating system loads, your security attributes, your user profile attributes, your root passwords, your network domain names, and so on. Finish all of that, repackage it, encapsulate that as a virtual appliance, so now you have a cookie cutter that you can go deploy with predictable times, predictable results as well. As we go up, we now start talking about virtual system and virtual applications. The difference is not that big. I'll give an example. On a 3-tiered application architecture, you would not start a web service instance on tier 3 until a database server has started. Correct? So it's very simple like that. So when you deploy, you can now build in dependencies within that to say, make sure the database server is deployed first, make sure it's configured right before you go into the web server, set that up, and point it to the database server. So that's the complexity that we call them patterns. And we give you a tool to say, you captured a virtual appliance, now add your own customization, add your own dependencies on top of it. Once you've done that, we'll say, all right, are you ready? Hit the capture button again, and we'll encapsulate all of that for you, create a new virtual appliance. Now you can take that, essentially, and redeploy that in any environment that is running Pure Applications. And it's really, really easy. You don't believe me, right? Normally, when IBM says easy, you guys come up and slap me. All right? So let me qualify that. It is really easy. The prereq for you is very simple. We need application knowledge that IBM does not have. So you can't fault us for that. We need somebody who's an application architect, because we don't understand what you guys do at a customer location or even if your own homegrown application. The rest, leave it down to us, we'll take care of it, and the tool is available to you as a business partner. If you want to see a demo, I'm advertising my session for tomorrow. Come and see that, and I'll actually show you live how to capture a virtual appliance. All right. I think I covered that already, and multiple patterns and so on. Here's some differences on what it does. For example, on the virtual system patterns, this is applicable to Pure application, or for that matter, you can do that with PureFlex as well. We will start pre-configuring WebSphere cluster connections, database connections between the 2 databases or 3 databases or 4 databases, however many you have, including, surprise, surprise, if you happen to have, you may be running DB2, but you may have Oracle application stack. Don't care. To us, it's just a bit of program that needs to be configured. If you can script it, we'll automate it. Simple. Okay? All right. As you go to the application patterns, this is where you start bringing in the business process models and automating the workflow associated with that as well. Automating the dependencies you have within the workflow. All of that can be brought in together. The security aspects associated with that as well can be automated as well, particularly from a high availability side, where we can turn around and say, before you run this batch job or before you run this process job, make sure you do a snapshot or a metro mirror or a global mirror before we get started with the batch processing and so on. So you can do business process automation as part of setting up virtual application patterns. So this one is a little bit complex. We still need your application knowledge, but we'll help you actually create the virtual appliance that will pre-configure all of that. So let me take you through how you go about doing this very quickly. And for this, I'm going to need my glasses. How many of you have seen this website? You probably don't need to. Have you come across this at all? And 1 or 2. All right. Anybody believe in free marketing? No? Do you trust IBM to do free marketing for you? Come on, say yes. It's Wednesday afternoon. I'm the last speaker before we're supposed to break up. Give me some feedback. All right. Free marketing, IBM does it for you. Does that sound good? Or too good to be true? Too good to be true? All right, how about this? All right, you can go in here. First of all, how do you get started? Developers, all of you qualify as developers. You can get started, and you can go in and essentially download the tools free of charge. All right, free marketing hasn't come yet, but at least you've got something to get going. Where's the ooh? All right. All right, I'm waiting for the ah in a minute. Browse all PureSystems solutions. So I will take this example here, and Infosys in the audience. I'm going to single out a couple of partners, by the way, who I worked with in the past. Infosys is one of the partners where we worked in the past with them. Let me go into Browse Solutions. Come on. Cycle, 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 cycle. How about this? Live demos. Let me try another one. Okay. If in doubt, let me see if I can recycle this. All right. Very simple. If I were to browse all Pure Application Solutions, it will list all the partners that have created virtual appliances. Right? You as a partner can create a virtual appliance, your logo will appear, your details about your solution will appear. At the same time, what will also appear is a link to say, click here and you can download the virtual appliance. So from a customer perspective, instead of sending a consultant out to the location, all you have to do is tell the customer, go to the IBM website, so thank you for advertising our website. And in exchange, what we do is we actually point you back to your website to say, here, this is how you download your virtual appliance. Very simple. And once that's done, you can do a license authentication through that. You can also, whatever tasks that you can put some small advertising words about the application. You can also put some solutions or what business problems they're solving and so on. Very simple. Go to the IBM website /PureSystems, and from there you should be able to, when the link works, you can go in and go through some of the details within that. All right. Enough of that. Let's get back to the presentation. How helpful is this? So we talked about application. Now we're going to talk about the value from a customer perspective, from a client perspective, and a CSI perspective. So we're going to figure out a way to say we're going to save money by reducing the hours it takes to set up your machine. Which customer do you know of that has budget that is available and is nice enough to give it back to the corporate company to say, I didn't spend it, I was a good citizen. You know it doesn't happen, right? If a customer has a budget, they will spend it. Our focus is very simple. The challenges our customers have is all of the budget they have today in IT is spent on infrastructure management. So when you talk about consulting about a solution, consulting about a software stack that you want to go sell to that customer, the budget disappears. The way you go about doing that is start talking to them. We'll fix your infrastructure problems. Now we can take that savings out of it and essentially start looking into how we can go about spending those same capital into creative new projects that will start moving your client into a different game versus just managing the infrastructure. The days of managing IT assets, just widgets, are gone. We have to start managing a set of services. People care about response times. People care about business processes. People care about how fast you can mine the database so that flight person can look at all the unstructured data and big data and saying, this customer was not happy, send them a free voucher. That's the new business model. But you have to find capital and investment, and you have to take that away from customers. There is no new budget. What you have to do is figure out a way to show them how to spend wisely in one area and reutilize that in another area. Pure application configuration, like the Pure Flex, application has a set of models. You can't change them. And when you look at the numbers here, you'll probably realize these are meant for very large customers, right? So we essentially turn around and say 96 cores, 1.5 terabyte RAM as a base configuration. How many customers are going to get that? Few. The answer should be not all. So this is where you need to start looking into Pure Flex. You need to start looking into Flex system compute nodes and start moving on into this environment as well. Some examples, people like Sugar CRM, we have Infosys in the audience, we worked with as well. They've created virtual appliances that are applicable for Pure application system. We've also had several business partners that have worked through this environment as well and created very simple things. And the whole idea here is create something that is very easy to deploy so you can move the dollars away into doing clever services within the organization. More examples in the industry, in the insurance industry as well. So I've talked to give you literally a very fast, very quick, very high-level debrief of what is a Flex offering, what is a Pure Flex offering, and what is a Pure application offering. 3 things. So I'm going to summarize that and saying, what does it mean to you? We talked about computer and IT services and how we need to shift to intelligent IT services. The second thing you'll find is we need to get our clients to become, basically have smart data centers. We've found that most of our customers don't really have smart data centers. Smart has lots of permutations associated with it. Simply put, we have to figure out a way to make it efficient, cut down costs through virtualization, cut down costs through centralized management, cut down costs to taking advantage and looking at it from a broader perspective of saying, I'm going to look at high availability disciplines across the data center, not just across a single location, but more importantly, cut down costs by achieving standardization. I'll spend some time on that. Once you do that, because money is not available everywhere, you can take those savings and reinvest towards better, newer, smarter projects as well. From a CSI perspective, the other thing we can start working on with you is start working with our clients to put together a lifetime or life cycle TCO model with that. And you'll find that the less we start spending on infrastructure, the less we start spending on doing hardware configuration, the better off you are in terms of deploying newer services as we go through. One area that is a very important aspect that plays a very important role in your conversation starter with customers is the concept of standardization. I'll net it out. Give you an example. I live, like I said, I live in Rochester, Minnesota. We have one of the world's best medical institutions there. It's called the Mayo Clinic. Rochester International Airport is named Rochester International Airport for select 10 to 15 customers. None of us can land there, by the way. And we have planes coming from Middle East that land there, and that's why it's called the Rochester International Airport. And literally, they come for medical treatment. That clinic, I won't exaggerate, but I'll net it out for you. 90% of their projects never finish. All right, IBM got engaged with them, and when we did the analysis, 90% of the IT projects never finish. And you think about it and say, does that sound like IBM? In research, we have projects, only 10 make it into a product. But no, we can't afford that in a customer location. So we started analyzing it. What we found was there are no decision makers. A surgeon can make their own decision. So they can pick an architecture, it runs on HP, on this computer software, on this computer hardware, on this set of services and so on, and the printers are different as well. Another consultant can dictate their own architecture as well. And doctors essentially were IT managers. And they would acquire all of these things. They don't know how to run this. They will give it to the IT management to say, go figure this out. That's why the project's never completed. So we found out just by saying, Mr. Customer, Mayo Clinic, you need to standardize on an architecture. It's not rocket science. Pretty soon we standardize on 3 things. Pick your hardware, pick your software, pick your middleware. The operating system from a software perspective. And just by doing so, that 90% incompletion rate, we've started to make inroads into this account by getting rid of all these multiple architectures. But not only that, it has allowed us now to say, because we're implementing this very finely now, we can take some of these applications and saying, you don't really need to deploy it here. You can take advantage of private cloud. So you can take advantage of other opportunities within that as well. And what we found from an IBM perspective, of course, we're making money as well. But at the same time, from a customer perspective, they've said within a year, their doctors, when they did the survey, found that the rating for IT staff increased significantly. And at present, we are at 27% of incomplete projects in a year. And all we've done is standardize the architecture. It's very simple. Kill all the projects that we can't finish and start on a specific platform. And as you do that, what you can also do, once you standardize it, because the architecture is known, you can pool it. You cannot mix multiple architectures in a shared pool. Once you can pool it, you have shared resources available. You can now start working through creating a cloud architecture. And that's exactly the value PureSystems provide. It gives you an opportunity to take this machine and have a discussion with your customer to standardize on a computer architecture. So with that, let me summarize. We have the best machine, of course, I would say that. And I have no, I'm full confidence in that. We have the best performance, absolutely. I don't care about the benchmarking wars, we'll still win, no matter what happens. What we need from you as CSI is 2 things. Endorse the machine through virtual appliances. We're inviting you to create your own virtual appliances that will help you. The second thing we want you to do is come up with quality services, not infrastructure services. Let us take care of that for you. Reinvest your IT resources, get them skilled up on business knowledge, which IBM lacks. Help us create virtual appliances, help us sell solutions like cloud, like business analytics, like smarter computing on top of this infrastructure as well. And if we do that together, we'll have a pretty successful rest of the year and following years as well. So once again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to come to Goa and have a discussion with you. And I have about a minute remaining, but I'll give it back to you since I'm standing between you and dinner. Thank you.